Normal Chairman's opening statement. I remind councillors that the public section of this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and that the recording will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting. I also remind all present that local government decision making affords no protection to councillors, council officers and the public for comments made during the meetings that are subsequently challenged in a court of law and determined to be slanderous. Right, that's got that out of the way. Apologies, I've got Councillor Titaru White is an apology for non-attendance, and Councillor Jane Nees, who is Deputy Chair of the Council, although not a member of the committee, has asked for her apology to be recorded. Can I have a mover for Councillor?
Starts with C.
Clark, and seconded by the other C, Councillor Crosby. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Right, thank you. Public forum, there is no public forum. Items not on the agenda. There are no items to be added to the agenda unless anyone will speak now. Forever hold your peace. Thank you. Order of business. The order of business on the agenda will be changed to accommodate external presenters as follows. Public agenda items 8.2 will be before 8.1, and that is because we have our auditor, Leon Patizzi, here, and I note the apology for Anton Labuschagne, who is unwell. Also, public excluded agenda item, we have Murray Chandler and Annalisa Elstop, who of course have spoken to us before and are great help to us from Grant Thornton. They will be zooming in at 11 o'clock. Right, calls for any declaration of conflict of interest. Thank you. Public excluded business to be transferred into open. There is none. Minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting for the 9th of June. Are there any amendments or matters arising? Moved by, I'm losing my brains this morning, Mr. Robertson.
Bruce there. So Stuart.
And seconded by Councillor Crosby. Right, thank you very much. All those in favour of acceptance say aye. Right, thank you. Right, we now go then to item 8.2. Which I formally welcome Leo Patizzi, and Kamaran will introduce this with no lead. Thank you. I would like just to say at the outset, Leon, there was some disquiet on receipt, certainly from me, on receipt of your email, which says you could not complete our audit on time or on the time we previously agreed. But we'll come to that later in your presentation. But I think it's probably right that Kamaran introduce it, and we'll take it from there. Thank you, Kamaran.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee and elected members in attendance. This particular report is aimed to provide the committee with an update on the annual report preparation process thus far and the audit progress to date. The interim audit has commenced and is around 75% complete. The report indicates it's 60% complete, but we've been advised by the audit director this morning that that's now 75% complete. The final audit is yet to commence. The audit plan had signalled that the final audit was meant to commence in September and be completed in November, with the intention to have the annual report adopted on the 24th of November. As the Chair has indicated, there's been a signal from Audit New Zealand that the timeframes have changed to now commence on the 29th of October to finish on the 9th of December as an indicative change to the final audit visit. Audit Director Leon Peterson will provide more details on that, and the The reasoning for that is around resource constraints from audit for the revised timeframes. The risks around that for council is that would preclude council from potentially adopting the annual report before the end of the calendar year. Any further delays would also mean that council staff would need to deal with 3 projects running concurrently, which would be the annual report, the annual plan, and preparation for the LTP. That would run the risk of additional workload demands on staff and consequential disruptions to business as usual responsibilities. So just wanted to highlight to the committee some of the consequential risks as a result of change in timeframes. In terms of the way the audit has been approached thus far, there's been regular communication between the finance team and the audit teams to manage expectations and deliverables on both sides. That's run reasonably well. At this stage, that's the current state of the report, of the process in terms of the annual report process. The draft annual report is substantially complete, ready for final audit, and the report also sets out the areas that has been completed thus far through the interim audit process and discussions with audit, and other pieces of work that has been commenced at this point in time. That's currently the state of this particular process at this point.
Leon, the floor is yours.
Not sure if I should say thank you, Mr. Chair, but thank you. Yeah, it's these discussions are not easy, and we're having a lot of them across the country. Auditor shortages, and of course the impact of COVID. And councillors Crosby asked me, but with the opening of the borders, did that help? Yes, it helped. We're bringing in a lot of auditors from across the world. Unfortunately, a lot of our young staff has been sitting waiting to go on the OEs, and now they can. So we're losing a lot of staff as well. That said, Kumaran referred to the process is going reasonably well. From council perspective, it's actually going very well. The hold-up is definitely on our side. We just don't have staff to complete all audits. So what we had to focus on was the financial statements of government, and then after that, or not after that, concurrently, financial market authority entities like Quayside, where we were quite happy that we could complete all those 13 audits by the 2nd of September. But as far as this audit is concerned, quite right, we said in our audit plan, that was the plan when we wrote it. We had staff available to start the audit in September. We don't have staff, and we're working at the moment to find staff to start the audit on 7 November. That said, we want to start with certain areas earlier. So, for instance, the fair value assessments, the put options, the bigger things in the audit, we want to start that in October, the moment we find staff. That's the best I can do.
Yes. Open to comment or questions. Did you want to make a comment, Matt or Bruce?
It's a difficult conversation, isn't it, Leon? If I can be upfront, this is my second conversation today, obviously with a different client, about exactly the same issue, and even being given a date when I can expect an opinion. But I've also been subject, Leon, to at least 3 calls to have immediate change to auditors elsewhere to free up the resourcing for Audit New Zealand on the basis that it gives you a chance to focus on this. Look, I'll share my conversation this morning. I understand that you won't know you've got October resourcing until at least the end of the day or tomorrow in terms of your national resourcing process. I guess I can really only make those as comments. So the audit, if I understand it correctly, goes back 2 weeks. You're saying the 24th, sorry, not the audit, but the opinion from the 24th to the 9th of December, correct?
It'll be mid-December.
Sorry, I don't know where about the 9th of December from. I understood that.
That's the completion of
Kumaran. Oh, that's the completion of the audit.
of the field work.
Yes, so it's going to be the 20th of December seems to be the date.
Yep.
Most are going. Okay, right. Well, I guess, Chair, that says what's the plan B for us? you're indicating that we can't adopt, even by way of special council meeting, dare I say it. So what is the plan B?
Matt?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chairman, I think with those dates getting so close to Christmas and with the potential for only being able to meet those dates if everything falls into place as resources, as Liam has pointed out, which is still uncertain now, I think we shouldn't be expecting to be able to adopt in 2022, as Kamaran has pointed out, and that this definitely pushes it into 2023 with the other projects that we have running. So I think we should be realistic around the timeframes. If Leon is not able to meet the target dates now, that we shouldn't expect that this will happen in 2022, that it is a 2023, and we're talking about February, March, then there are other timeframes that backs up against. So yeah, well into 2023 before we're able to have an audit opinion and the annual report adopted.
Councillor Crosby?
Through you, Chair, look, we do understand the challenging situation, but the but for me is that we're a significant public entity. We are linked to other significant public entities, be Quayside and the Port of Tauranga, and there's an issue here, in my view, around trust and confidence, that we, through no fault of our own, have an inability to sign off significant budgets and KPIs, which are just as important as the money, actually your performance. And so, you know, that's a worry that if we're looking into next year, for a year that ended mid this year, that's a worry. And while I'm confident that the organisation has performed well, despite difficult circumstances under COVID, the public need to be reassured of that, and that's the issue.
Thank you. As far as I understand it, Leon, what you are saying to us is that there's a physical impossibility without the staff to do the work. What can I just ask you what your certainty is of attracting new staff? Where are we with obtaining those staff? Because of course that is critical and could delay us even more if there's uncertainty in that.
So before I answer that, just to talk about pre-Christmas to post-Christmas, a number of auditors have already been deferred to next year. That is not ideal, because when we do this year's audit next year, while we're doing tertiary audits, and then energy companies, and you know, it is a mess. And that's a mess we were in early this year, 2 councils deferred plus a number of entities. Reallocation of audits, Mr. Robertson brought up, we were looking at that, and a number of audits have been deferred or reallocated to other service providers or big firms. The problem is the firms are in the same boat as us. They don't have staff either, and if they pick up any public sector entities, they have to drop their private entities to be able to do the audits. So this is not an easy answer. But then the third thing, what is the certainty you asked about? We are doing everything we can to get staff in. The problem is getting staff in from overseas, because locally we can only steal from the big 4. That doesn't make sense at all. So we need to look at either people who used to work for us and see if we can entice them back. And then of course looking overseas. The problem with overseas is the visums. To get the visums in place and to get those staff over. So we've got a whole line of people coming just to the Tauranga and Hamilton offices, to which I'm closely connected. But they're not going to arrive until, I think, early October or mid-October at the earliest, and some of them only in the new year. So the uncertainty is definitely there. My preference is to try our level best and get this audit done before Christmas, but with the contingency, if I can't get it done, that we look at next year.
Nolene. In a minute, Bruce. Nolene.
I would just like to highlight though, if we do push out to next year, we will have a legislative breach in terms of adopting our financial statements or annual report, which is the 31st of December.
Yeah, I do accept that, but of course it's always the art of the possible, and if it becomes impossible, then there is a reason why there is that breach. Unsatisfactory as it is, we have to face the facts on that. Bruce?
Thank you. The point was well made. That was exactly my point. I mean, I'm conscious we are in public session, but the reality of it is what we are faced with as a council, as in contrast with Leon, is we will have his opinion before the 31st, but we will be choosing not to adopt it. For the reasons that you've said back, there are other things that are busy and are on the lines. But actually, we're handed a hospital pass, which is an opinion late, which doesn't suit our meeting cycle and our other priorities. So if it's adopted in the new, what I'm hearing said is I'll have the opinion pre-Christmas, that's Leon's commitment, but then as an organisation we are not choosing to deal with that until post the statutory deadline. So we are in breach, not Audit New Zealand.
Is it that we're not choosing, or that it will be impossible for us to?
It will depend on the circumstances and the timing. We have to do obviously letter of representation, there's a process to go through. When we get the audit opinion, with all of the work that leads up to it, we've sometimes had the opinion on the day of the council meeting. So of course we could call a council meeting right up to that final Friday before Christmas, but we would have to have reasonable certainty that the audit opinion was going to come in. In recent years we've only known on the day or the day before that opinion has been completed. So it will be touch and go, even with the commitment for resources that Leon's talking about, but we'll be able to do it before Christmas.
In the end, it will depend on whether we get the audit done. And if you look at some of the audits that have been deferred from last year into this year, what disclosure was in the annual report, and one of your neighbours just down the road have got that, and what is in the audit report, it clearly states, this is no fault of council, this is the auditors. So just to put that on the table. But Matt is right. 2 years ago when I picked up the audit report was with you about a week before adoption date. That's the way I like to work. These circumstances are not really the way I prefer to work, and giving you an audit report on the day or the day before, not my style. Sorry.
Okay, worst case scenario. Have you looked at worst case scenario? What would happen if you didn't get the additional support?
Then the audit will have to be deferred into next year.
Thanks, Chair.
Chairman.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of comments Leon made. Firstly, he acknowledged this is a mess. If we keep, doesn't matter whether it's Audit New Zealand or ourselves, if we keep doing things the same way and we acknowledge it's a mess, you're going to get the same result. Personally, having heard the conversation, I don't have a high level of confidence, Leon, that you're going to hit this off in 22, because even if you do get some recruits from offshore, there is always going to be a transition period between people walking in the door and really hitting their straps. So I think between you, Chair, and the Deputy Chair, and Matt, there needs to be a pretty serious discussion with Audit New Zealand, as you said, Bruce. What is Plan B? Because if you keep doing this thing the same way, you're going to get the same result, and it'll be well into first quarter of 23 before we get the opportunity to sign it off.
Right, well, I think what we have done, we've explored the situation, we are aware of the situation, there's nothing we can do about it sitting here today, so we're just going to have to acknowledge that that is the situation as we know it today. It's an unsatisfactory report, and I know that is not your fault, but nevertheless it is an unsatisfactory report. And all I think we can do at this stage is I move that we accept that report, and can I have a seconder? Seconder by Mr. Robinson. So all those in favour of acceptance, please say aye. Aye. Right, thank you. I've looked around the table, made sure that is aye all round, so a unanimous decision. Leon, we won't delay you anymore. Go back and get audited.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I encourage you not only to speak to me, but I mean, I've got an executive director, the name of Stephen Walker, and at the Auditor General's office there's the Deputy Auditor General for Local Government, Mark Maloney. They're both aware of the situation. They may have more eloquent answers than me.
Their pieces of string were the same as yours, I think. So, but thank you anyway, and thank you for your attendance. Right, now we are now on to the internal audit report. So, welcome our dynamic duo, Steve and Aaron. Can I just say at the outset how delighted I am that you have listened to what I asked you for at the last meeting and you've come up with the goods, in that you have cleared a whole host of the outstanding actions from previous internal audits, and therefore we'll be starting the new triennium with a clean as sheet as possible. So thank you for that and well done. Right, Matt, over to you.
Nothing to add to the report, Mr. Chairman, so I'll just hand over to Aaron and see if he wants to add anything.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take that report as read. The report goes through our proposed work plan for this year and the next 3 years. It goes through our progress on this year's financial 2022 audit plan, and it looks at the follow-up on the actions. The work plan going forward strikes a balance between framework reviews, operational risk and strategic risk. We would like to have that ratified now, but we also intend to represent it at the first opportunity for the next triennium, just to make sure it lines up with their needs as well. The work plan for 22, it's all about COVID getting in the way for a part of it, but that has come back. A couple of audits had to be deferred, but they will come through in this year's audit plan, and the post-COVID funding readiness review was superseded. When we were scoping that review, it wasn't clear what assurance requirements the Minister for the Environment would put through. They came back with a lot more detail, and their assurance was quite comprehensive, so it was decided there's not much point in us doing a review on top of that. In terms of the IR follow-up, I'd have to note that it was the teams that were responsible for the actions that cleared them with some prompting, and they made really good progress there. And the majority of the open actions now relate to recently completed reviews, and there's work underway to address the remaining legacy issues.
Right, thank you for that. So, questions, please? Comments? Bruce?
Yeah, Aaron, thank you. Appreciate the report, and actually it's good to acknowledge what was obvious from the outstanding recommendations. Done a lot of good work to clean things up, so well done, buddy. That's impressive. Can I, and actually I should recognise also that you've had to work with people throughout the organisation to do that, so I think it's actually a compliment to the organisation that we've done, as well as to the hard work you and Steve did. Sorry, I just wanted to understand, because I probably have missed the beat even from previous reporting. I was attracted to that MFE post-COVID readiness review. Can you, I've forgotten the background, can you just give me a quick snapshot of that, please, what it was?
Sure, it was kind of looking at, the council received a lot of additional funding through a lot of that COVID extra money to make sure that council had the resourcing in place to deliver, and then we weren't landed with issues going forward. The feedback I have from the GMs and managers is that work has now pretty much been delivered, funding is kind of reverted to BAU, and in the background the initial assurance requirements weren't clear, now they've become quite strenuous. That's my feedback from the team under audit, and looking at the audits, nothing's come out to suggest that there's any worries in there in terms of the deed of funding that MFE put up, which is quite comprehensive about deliverables and all that sort of stuff. No issues were found with that. So we took assurance from that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No, internal audit is so important. We only started it in my first triennium on the council, and it's proved it's worth its weight in gold ever since. And in the odd times when we haven't had an internal auditor, we really did miss that. So since you come on board, Aaron and Steve, you know, you've done a great job in getting us to where we are. And so certainly at the end of this triennium, I'd like to say thank you to both of you for the efforts you have made and the way you are treated and respected by the rest of the staff. That's not always true about internal auditors that I've seen in the past. So well done to you both. So can I have a mover for accepting the report, please? Councillor von Daddleton, seconded by Councillor Crosby. All those in favour, please say aye. Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, now on to item 8.3, Chairperson's Report, page 42. Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as you said at the beginning of the meeting, this is the conclusion of this triennium, and I just thought I would expand the appendices that you normally receive in this meeting with the both forward and backward-looking work programme for this committee, with just the backward-looking programme for those 10 meetings that are highlighted there from February 2020. So that shows the comprehensive work programme both in risk and assurance for the committee, as well as the internal audits and external audit reports that you've received over that time, and it highlights some of those major items that you might wish to pick out or identify as achievements over the committee's work programme during this triennium. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, I echo your words there, Matt, and I took some time reviewing the whole of that report, which is on page 45 and following, and I was quite blown away actually with what we have managed to achieve. I mean, it really is a tribute to the staff, the work programme we have got through, especially in the challenging period which we've had. So I don't particularly want to pick out individual areas. It's just looking at the report in total. I'm just delighted with where we are and where we stand. So any other comments or questions, please? No? Thank you very much. In that case, and no other questions about any of the matters in the chairperson's report? No, thank you. Right, therefore, can I have a mover, please, for acceptance? Councillor Clark, seconded. Councillor Crosby, all those in favour say aye. Thank you. I did hear a couple. Right. Chairman's Discretionary Fund, page 50, 8.4, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is your annual report on payments that are made out of the Chairman's Discretionary Fund, and you'll like to see there on page 51 the two items of expenditure that were approved during 21-22, and the appendices show the approval process that we went through. I'd just like to highlight the first one, the Rotary Youth Drivers Awareness Programme, and the continued success of that programme now in its 4th year, through the support of this council and the other fundraising that does. It does a lot of great work in the community and doesn't necessarily traditionally fit into any of the other work programmes of the council, so the discretionary fund is an ideal opportunity to consider that on its merits and then agree or to not agree whether funding should be given. And we have given funding in the past, and this is the annual report as well from the Rotary Youth Drivers Awareness Programme is attached, and you can see the numbers of people that programme has supported. So nothing to add other than that, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Voldalson.
Yes, look, it's my pleasure to move this report. Rider, is it Rider? Yeah, whatever it is, the Rotary one. I mean, the number of people we were told for next year, the number of students that are going through that program is phenomenal, like truly phenomenal. I can't remember the actual figures for next year, but it's growing exponentially, and it's a fantastic service to our community, and I thank the chairman for using his discretionary funds to support it. And to be honest, yeah, we could support it a lot higher, I think, than we are, but if, you know, it's a matter of whether you can find a mechanism to do so without going through the chairman's discretionary fund in the future, but it is a fantastic program, so I'm very happy to support both of those allocations of funds to receive the report.
Second, before I ask for a second, I just want to add a further comment that as far as I've been made aware, the intention is to get every student approaching driving age on all of the schools in the area through this program, and it really has the capacity for saving lives for the future. So the police are congratulating us as a council for enabling this. So all I would say is well done, and can I have a seconder, please?
Could I just a point of query and just a matter of protocol, is it appropriate that Andrew, I believe, is chairman of the local Rotary Club?
No.
Should you not? Okay, fine, okay, I just thought there was potential conflict of interest. No, retract that, thank you.
Councillor Crosby.
Just before you do that, can I also comment on the second one, Arena?
Yeah.
Meeting, I'm not sure if Andrew is too, tomorrow, the director and producer, they're post-production and it is making progress. From what we've seen, it is a story that desperately needs to be told. There's a lot of learnings from that, and of course the Bay of Plenty Regional Council was probably the key player in that, along with Maritime New Zealand. So that was very well received, that contribution as well. So just an update, it is progressing, but of course more resources are needed to complete it to a very, very high standard.
Good, right. So, did you second that then? You did. Okay, thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Can I just ask the question, Matt? Has Rena finally been put to bed in that have all the court cases now finished, or where do we stand with it?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, Mr. Chairman, who knows what the future will hold, but yes, as far as I'm aware, there's no court cases or prosecutions that I'm aware of.
Okay, right, that's been moved, seconded and has been passed, so we now move on to the expenditure and Koha report for the year ended 30th June 2022. And for noting the lead on this, but I just want to make the point that at previous committees, I was noted my dissatisfaction that certain of the matters were redacted. And therefore, at my request, and if councillors have probably picked up, those figures are included in the confidential section. So I think we councillors do need access to that. It's important that we have a grip on all our finances, and it's important we do have that information. So I just want to thank the team for including that in the confidential section. Nolene, over to you.
Chair, I will consider the report as read. There are 3 items in the Koha report that you would have noticed says unknown. So I've got the details of that, which I can share with you in the confidential as part of the meeting. So I'll open the floor for any questions if you do have.
No, right, so I'm just going to ask somebody to move the report, acceptance. Councillor Van Dadelsen, seconded by Mr Robertson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Right. So we are now. Where are we now? 8.6. Sorry, I thought I saw Kumara and sitting down.
What page?
Page 90. 8.6. Yes. I just want to steal your thunder a bit and say the number of locomotives is exponentially increasing. So we're either doing something wrong or people are getting used to asking us questions. Jess, over to you.
Kia ora koutou. Yep, so we're at page 19 in your agenda, and as has been said, I'm presenting a report on Lagoimas for 2021-22 financial year. So we received 121 requests for official information during this period. This is a decrease on the previous year, not by much, but overall we are seeing a general increase in requests from earlier years. 61% of our requests were directed at the regulatory services team, so a large majority are around regulatory services. And then there's a fairly even distribution amongst the other groups. During this period, we had no breaches of timeframes, which was very pleasing. And I don't know if you recall, but at the previous meeting, well, I should say at last year's meeting when I presented these reports, I advised that we had implemented a new charging policy in line with the Ombudsman's guidelines. And so this was our first year really of implementing that policy. So if we get requests that are hugely onerous, and those are the kind of ones that say all information to date, and so we'd have to go through all of our records. We will go back to requesters and say, well, that's going to take us this many hours, and so we will have to charge for this request. On nearly all occasions, we're then able to refine the scope of the request and really work with the requester around what exactly it is they're looking for. But there was one occasion where the requester still wanted to proceed with the request, so we did charge on one occasion, and that is the first occasion we've done that at council. So for that particular request, we charged the requester $462 and then they paid that amount. And so that's always agreed as part of our policy prior to us doing the work, so it doesn't come as a surprise to the requester. In terms of complaints to the Office of the Ombudsman during this period, we had one complaint, and with the Ombudsman's process, they will always undertake an initial investigation before deciding whether to proceed with a formal investigation. So an initial investigation was undertaken, and the Ombudsman was satisfied that we had complied with our obligations, and so it didn't lead to a formal investigation, and that matter was closed. So Council, in my view, has performed really well in responding to Lagoimas this year. We have really good processes in place with our Lagoima team, and then working closely with the legal team. We've continued, as a legal team, we've continued the work of training and education with teams. We do a lot of specific and tailored training to teams that deal with a lot of Lagoimas, or that struggle with really big Lagoimas, and we'll continue to do that to ensure we have these high levels of compliance. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Yeah, first one from me. Do we have a formula for assessing the charge, or is it an hourly charge? Or I mean, I hear that you had a big one which you charged $400 and something odd, but that's not an awful lot of work.
No, it's not. So the Ombudsman has released guidelines around what he deems to be acceptable for local government entities to charge. So the first hour is always free. And thereafter, we have a fee for staff members, but it depends on the level of that staff member as well. So yes, there is a formula in the policy that we follow, and we do actually track that time and that value against our Lagoimas in any case. Yeah, but we do follow the Ombudsman's guidelines around that.
Questions? Councillor Von Dallison?
Yeah, it might need to go in the public excluded, but I noticed one of these Lagoimas did take 25 hours. That's a lot of work. I think, you know, if you've only charged for one, there are a few that are big, but that was the biggest I saw. I just want to get an idea of where the threshold is for charging, because it would appear there's more than one that's quite large and should be charged for if it's that much work involved.
Yeah. So when we make the assessment around charging, we do have to weigh it up against the public interest around that matter, and yeah, really what the request is about. So if it's a matter that is something that is of interest to the public, and we deem it to be a matter that information should be released on, the Ombudsman's preference is that local government entities don't restrict individuals' ability to access that information. And so we will make that assessment on some of those cases. White Island's a really good example of that. We had a lot of Lagoimas around White Island when that happened, and obviously that takes a lot of time to go through, but it was a matter that was of particular interest to the public, and it was right for us to be handing over that information without charging people. So yeah, that's the assessment that we do make, and that's what's expected of us.
Bruce?
Thanks, David. Thanks, Jesse. So look, I'd just like to ask the forward-looking question, I guess, which comes out of this. We've got the annual review. Does it, you know, are we just going to continue the way we are? And not saying that that's wrong, because clearly you've done well, and the lack of, the lack of ombudsman intervention shows that we're on top of it. Is there any learnings out of this 61% of regulatory? Is there something we could be doing different? I appreciate, you know, one of the things that the sector looks at is proactive release. I understand the legal risks that are around that as well, which go with it. So I'm just wondering if there's any learnings or thoughts from that perspective that's being made by your group.
Yes, thank you. That was going to be my response. Proactive release is an area we're looking at. So we have developed our policy around proactive release, and we have now set up the space on our website for proactive release to occur. And so now within my team, we've set up a process where we will review Lagoimas as they're going out, and we'll consider when certain matters occur, like if we were to have something like White Island again, I think we would just next time proactively release all of that information, knowing that those Lagoimas were going to come. So yeah, that would definitely be the primary learning.
Thank you.
Councillor Crosby?
Thanks, Jessica. And obviously, Lagoimas are right for people to seek information, so I don't have an issue with that. But I did note one appeared to come from Tauranga City Council, which is strange. Why don't they just pick up the phone and ask?
So on most occasions, we will just be transferring information. I believe that was probably a transport-related one, if I remember correctly, and that was a really, really.
It was herd and livestock data.
Oh, was it? Oh, I don't know what that one was about. If it is really large, sometimes staff will put it through those processes so that there are really clear timeframes. And it can be sometimes just to manage expectations of other entities who may want that information straight away. The obligations under the legislation in terms of timeframes don't change depending on who's asking for it. So that's potentially why on that occasion it was processed as a Lagoima. But yeah, on most instances we will just work together.
Yeah, just a comment, and it's similar to Councillor Crosby. I think there's the opportunity for staff to have a bit of a drafting gate methodology here, because a lot of them that I get, people say they're going to have a Lagoima. You say, don't do a Lagoima, just I'll get someone to ring you, and a lot of them get resolved. And it takes the pressure off staff in terms of having to sit there and do a 3 or 4 hour thing when it's about communication at the end of the day. Not all of them, but there are some that you can, I think, pick up the telephone and get a result.
I think that's a really, I'm glad that happens. I always view Lagoima, when it's got to the Lagoima stage, you've really got it into the virtually confrontational stage, which is what we don't want to do. We are servants of the public. We ought to be providing with the information we can. Sometimes the public may be unreasonable, and we have to but we have to accept that. So yeah. Any further comment?
Are we still in Lagoimas, or are we just working through attachment 8.5? And the query is just, I'm looking at the top of page 80, and this is just quizzical that we have $100,000 ATC payment from us. Now, if that's an annual payment, I'm quite surprised, because with over 400 employees, I would have thought 100k ACC payments would actually be extremely light. That was it's just coming from personal experience.
we've dealt with that item already, so.
We have, so there is no going back, and I do apologise.
I'm certainly quite content that we deal with it out of committee and make sure we satisfy your
Yeah,
question.
I'm just quizzical knowing that my personal capacity, what I pay in ACC, Expenditure, any of that, and to 100 grand for an organisation of over 400 people, it seems incredibly light, that's all. Cheers.
I do accept that the councils are probably funding the ACC all on their own. That's what we have to pay. I never quite understand why we do, but that's another matter entirely. Right, back to the Goivers. I'm trying to find out if where's a report. Recommendations on page 90. Receive the report. Can somebody move, please? Moved by Mr. Robertson, seconded by Councillor Von Dallers, and all those in favour say aye. Aye. Right, thank you, Jess, and look forward to seeing you a little bit later on. Right, that comes to the end of the open session of this committee. Can we now stop the recording, Miranda?